Are you feeling stressed out? Perhaps being plagued by day terrors or worse, night terrors? Then go on to guidedhypnotic.com and download your free guided hypnotic meditation. That's guidedhypnotic.com. So there you go.
That was amazing.
Wasn't it? My commercial voice. All right. So now you're prepared for the best introduction you've had at least since noon. Okay, here we go. Dr. Dennis Cummins, an internationally recognized speaker, best-selling author, and sales expert for elite providers of professional services. Dennis is on a mission to take the mystery and the stress out of sales and selling. He is committed to teaching medical and legal professionals the science and art of comfortable, confident, shameless self-promotion. Since 2008, Dr. Cummins has taught over 64,000 people throughout North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia how to build business and become more successful by learning to message their value to their clients. In his latest book, Non-Professionally Speaking TM, Dennis shows you how to successfully and fearlessly combine the skills of sales, and communication to attract better clients, close more sales, and create massive profit.
Holy that sounds crap. Good. I'm going to listen to that guy.
Right? I was the second best one all day. So thank you. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your most valuable asset, right? Your time and the fact that you're here, I don't take lightly. The purpose of these conversations is to really help people get to the level of success that you've accomplished, and you're already out there doing it. So hopefully this is a great opportunity for people to learn some nuggets, how to overcome. We're dealing some incredible challenges right now, and it's caused a lot of people to question what their goals or motives may be. So thank you so much. And let's start digging in. How the heck are you? And who are you? And what is your motivation, your purpose?
Well, there you go. Well, first of all, Doug, hey, thank you for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to share what it is that I do with people. For those of you that don't know who I am, Dennis Cummins, retired chiropractor, author, international speaker, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But what I really am passionate about is helping people share their messages, share their gifts. I had a mentor a really long time ago taught me, he says, each and every one of you is a gift to share with the world. And when you don't share it, you cause suffering. And that was like this nugget that just stuck with me for a while. And I used to think, I worked as a chiropractor. When I helped people, it was one-on-one, right? But then I kind of fell into this speaking business for a while, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. And then I realized that I really love teaching other people how to speak about what it is they do. Because I really believe, Doug, you and I met at an event and, we connected and things. You have a great message that you share with people, and you're doing it with these podcasts. But there are so many people out there that have gifts and services to share. And not enough people are able to take advantage of it because they just don't know about who they are. And even more importantly, they don't know how they help. So what I do is I really help, and I really focus on service providers, people that have a service to offer. So maybe it's a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, a chiropractor, a massage therapist, financial planners, coaches and authors and speakers. I help them get their message out there by becoming comfortable with talking about what they do. You mentioned shameless self-promotion. And I teach them how to be shameless about, and by that, I mean, just having no shame about letting people know who you are and how you can help. It's always up to them whether or not they want to take advantage of that. But when you don't promote yourself, you rob people of the choice to decide. And that's what my mission is all about, giving you the power to allow other people to decide whether or not they want to do business with you.
Well, that's funny. One of the things that David Newman shared earlier, he said, man, I want to go out and start my own business and all that. But I realized if nobody knows who I am, I'm not going to have any business. So that is so important. People forget how necessary it is to put themselves out there in order. Like, it's really selfish not to.
Right.
And that's a tough thing for some people. It was for me that was the reframe I actually had to put in myself, because I was like, I'm being a jerk by not offering solutions. Have you noticed any patterns in that struggle for people? When you talk about shameless promotion,
Oh yeah.
what are some of the patterns you've
Absolutely.
noticed?
Well, here's what it is. People they're usually okay about telling you who they are. They'll tell you their name and what they do for a living and how long they've been doing it. That they're okay there. Then they get really good at talking about what they do, right? Because this is what I do. So I'm going to explain, if I was in chiropractic, it would be about what chiropractic is and how it helps the body. If it's, in hypnotherapy, you're going to talk about how, talking to the subconscious and reprogramming those thoughts allows you to achieve greater levels of success by eliminating those unseen, unfelt blocks in their lives. That's the part where everybody's really great. Where it becomes really challenging, and this is universal just about, is when you have to ask the person to take the next step. And especially if you have to ask them to pony up some money when you ask them to take the next step. When you're asking them to actually pay you for that service, man, I've seen all manner of society just freeze up like a clam when that happens. And by the way, that was true for me too. When I first got into this whole speaking thing and somebody invited me to sell from the stage, oh, sweaty palms. I mean, sweat running down my back into the butt crack. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, it was like somebody put a fire hose on me, and you could tell my voice changed. You get that petrified look, and you come from a place of fear instead of a place of service. And it took me a little while and some coaching to figure out how to move beyond that. And what I discovered is if you understand, if you come from the right place, right? Like you know this, when you truly come from a place where you know that this is in your best interest. And I'm not talking about selling shit, right? I'm not talking about selling crap that is of no value and you're just trying to make a buck. I will never help anybody like that. And I don't think that's ethical, responsible. I don't think anybody should do that. But if you know you have a product or service that can help somebody, I think you have to get as good as possible and as comfortable as possible at telling them they should pay you to help you solve their problem. But it's a huge block for people, that whole asking for money thing for what I can help you with.
So what was for you, or was it the same as others, the actual block? Like, what is the meaning someone has associated to to that exchange of value for value?
It actually really boils down to ego. And by that, what I mean is when people are worried about that, it's because they're thinking about themselves. They're thinking, what if they think I'm trying to sell them something? What if I think that, when we have this sales thing, it's like a horrible, like a negative kind of connotation to being a salesman, and that sleazy salesman and that used car salesman. But in my mind, and this is what I reframe for my clients, is sales equals service. If you don't have any sales, that's because nobody was convinced to follow along with you. And what I teach my clients to do is that, number one, you have to build trust with the other person. You have to convey your value to the other person, and you have to explain to them why it's in their best interest to pay you to help solve their problem. You're going to save them either time, you're going to save them money, or you're going to save them lifestyle. It's one of those three things that you're going to do for them. But you have to be good at explaining that. And, that sales isn't just, hey, give me $10 and I'll do this for you. The sales is a whole experience that you create. And what I think, if people just understood that, if you have that conversation, if you create that experience, the sale doesn't become a push. The sale is an invitation. You just say, listen, I can solve your problem. This is what my fee is. And would you like to move forward? And if you do it the right way, if you tick off all the boxes along the way, and there's a system for it, there's a step-by-step procedure. It's not like everybody's going to do it exact same, but there are little pieces that you have to make sure you include in this conversation. And if you do that, the sales follow naturally. And then it takes that pressure off, and you feel like, this isn't a big thing about me anymore. It's, I truly want to help you, but this is what your investment is into getting that to happen. And that's the mindset change that has to happen. And it had to happen for me too.
And well, it's a vital part of the process, obviously, because especially for people who are heart-centered, who, you know, care about people, they can oftentimes run that kind of fear of like, oh, what if I don't deliver? What if I don't, like, and then we start really being worried. And the other conversation I notice is the commodity thinking, where instead of appreciating your unique approach, you're unique and owning what's special about what we have to offer, then we start worrying about pricing and worrying about all that instead of going, no, this is special. This is different. It doesn't have to be, you know, I think the challenge with a lot of people will start comparing to other people, and that's not going to be healthy either. You know, the only comparison should be, is there a need?
Right. And is there a need for you? And everybody that I've ever worked with, we, you know, and including even me now at certain levels, right? No matter, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, no matter how big you get in your area, there's always somebody bigger and better than you. That
Right.
does it better, that's got a better formula, that's got a better strategy, that has more sales. And if you start comparing yourself to them, you're just doomed for disappointment and
Mm-hmm.
failure. But if you do know that, you know, you have some value to offer, and this is one of the things that I always start off with. I always start off with I call them the 6 Ps. And the first ones are passion and purpose. You know, what are you personally excited about? Because that energy will transcend the rest of the presentation. And why are you here? How do you help is really the purpose side of that. And if people are clear about their passion and their purpose, the rest of it becomes a whole lot easier. What I find is a big challenge is that people are doing things that they're just not really in love with, right? They're doing things for the money instead of for the fulfillment and for the heart of it, you mentioned.
Yep.
You know, they're not heart-centered, they're wallet-centered. And I think people who are wallet-centered are always going to have a challenge. It's
And as part of your
when
work, do you help them, like, when you work with a client, is that part of your work, looking at what is the motivator behind that and help shift into, you know, out of the butt and into the heart?
it's, you know, pretty much the very first thing that I do when we run our workshops or when I work with personal clients is the very first thing we do is we get clear about something I call their point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who are you and what do you stand for? Or maybe what do you stand against? Because from that point of view, all the rest of it just follows. Like, if this is my mission, this is my passion, this is what I want to achieve, and now I'm going to give you the strategy to do that. But it has to start from there. You know, Simon Sinek talks about starting with why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's about starting with your why from the beginning. It's very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're speaking, when you're going to offer something, when you have some value to offer, well, why? Why is it important to you? And I think once people tap into that, then the mechanics of it become a little easier. I talk about 2 things in non-professionally speaking in the book. I talk about the mechanics of public speaking and the mechanic. The mechanics is the what goes where, when do you put in a story, when do you put in a testimonial, how do you seed value, what is the 7 steps that you have to follow when you're doing a sale at the end of an event. And there are mechanics, there is a structure, and if you don't follow it, you're going to have a tough time, no matter how positive thinking you are. But the bigger part of that is the mechanic. Like, who do you need to be here to have the confidence to be okay if people say no, right? You know, my philosophy is whenever I get into a situation where I'm going to offer something, I'm going to offer a program, I'm going to offer a service or something, I always want to deliver enough value where even if they say no, they got value. Their lives are changed. Their lives are a little bit better. And you have to be okay that some people are going to say no. And if I get into a room and let's just say there's 50 people, 100 people, whatever it is, and I do a presentation and I talk about all the things that I can do to help them make their lives better and help them grow their businesses and get more leads and convert more sales. And at the end of that presentation, none of them registers for my program, then that's just because I did a bad job, right? because I have hundreds of testimonials of people that have added 6 figures to their income, that have happier jobs, that are more, that feel more fulfilled about what they're doing. They have more personal self-confidence. So I know that it works. It's just, I didn't do a good job explaining. I didn't do a good job of messaging my value. So rather than thinking, oh, they all hate me, I just think, wow, I didn't serve them. I didn't show up really well today. And once you start turning that thought process around and looking at me instead of blaming them, you start to take some responsibility and you start to make the decision, all right, so what do I need to do to get better? Right? So I've been training for over a dozen years now, and I've got almost 11,000 hours in front of rooms and traveled all over the world getting to do it, and truly blessed because of that. But I've also invested well over $100,000 in learning from other speakers and continue to do that to this day, because I know I can always get better at sharing my gift. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, the learning never ends. I mean, I'll be honest with you, part of the show, why I do this and the people who I have on, it's me learning too. I know that I'm genuine and I love like having these conversations, because if we were hanging out having coffee, this would be the conversation we'd be having anyway, because I'm genuinely curious, I'm looking to learn. I want to support, I want to, resource share and do all of that. So I figured, hey, this is a great way for me to, not only help other people because this information is necessary, but there's the secondary gain here is I get to learn. I get to, kind of pick some brains that maybe, that they win out of it too, right? So you get exposure, we get to share some, we get to cross collateralize and our fan base and the people who we're influencing, and get to learn. It's just the biggest gift ever. I like this is definitely a gift of COVID as it were. So let's go there for a minute, and we're going to hop around in different areas. When we met, it was one of the last. I think probably one of the last, certainly for SR, but I think probably almost anywhere last events that weekend. I think.
Right.
I don't think there's a whole lot more going on. While that was going on, I know, Gene McNaughton, our dear friend, was, stressed out about what was going to be going on and events coming up. Did you have a whole bunch of things lined up that had, fallen through and fell apart, and you maintained your state throughout that event? You still did amazing. You served, you added tons of value. You were present with everybody. Did you have, were deals falling apart while you were on stage? Was other stuff happening? And then how did you start pivoting?
There's always stuff that's going on, right? And, and I do a lot of, in additional teaching workshops and working with, service providers, I do a lot of keynote speaking, right? So there were a lot of things on my calendar that were, speaking in Vegas or speaking in New York that they're not there anymore.
Right.
Part of it is, what do you do about it? But the other part is, well, what do you do about it? It just changed, right? So now what's next is really what happens next. So, more things like this, more virtual podcasting, or more virtual lessons or tutorials, or building a new online program, which is what Victoria and I are in the middle of doing right now. So it's sort of, there's always all right, whatever happens outside, that's what happens outside, but what do you do with it? And I've always been pretty positive. In terms of the event though, Doug, for better or worse, now sometimes Victoria will say it's worse, but I think it's better. I'm really good at compartmentalizing things, right? So when things are going on in my personal life, that's my personal life. But once I get up on that stage, I know why I'm there. And it's not because I like the way lights look on my face, right? It's because I'm there to serve. I think there's some people that need to hear what that is. And I'm pretty focused about that when I'm there. Now I'll go back up to my room and it'll switch back to, oh shit, personal mode. But when I'm with people, when I'm working with a client, I have this ability to just switch everything else off for at least a little while. And in most cases, I find that helps me a lot with business.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's for me, my biggest joy is doing stuff like this, meeting people, connecting, and speaking on stage. everything like that, everything disappears. We could have like, I remember this. So years ago when I was working with Tony Robbins, this is so embarrassing. It was early in the morning, and it was the gig was at the time was like, doing trainings for groups. And this happened to be for like a BNI group or one of those, I think it was a real estate office that had their morning meeting at a restaurant. So I'm pulling up into the restaurant, and it's like right at sunrise, and the parking lot did not have things separating the poles. It was just like random poles in the thing. And then I got blinded by the light, and I drove right into a pole. And I wasn't going that fast. It was like, 10 miles an hour. It was in the parking lot, but it was enough that it crunched the front of my car. My airbag didn't work. My head goes right into the windshield. So I cracked the windshield. I got some blood going down my face. I wipe off the blood. And the woman who was in charge of it saw the whole thing happen. And I was like, oh, great. So I come in, she's like, you need to go to the hospital? Do you need to go there? She's like, no,
good to go.
Your team is here. I'm here. This is Tony Robbins. We don't let something like that stop us. And as soon as I was, in their training and present, that was what was most important. Completely forgot about what had just happened. And then, of course, when I went back out and had to get my car towed and looked at my face, I was like, oh my gosh, these poor people. Like right. Like I couldn't stop the blood completely. So it was like, it looked like I had a horrible shaving accident. But I just share that story of that point of that compartmentalizing, that I get that that when you're in that zone, no matter what's going on outside, this is, we're serving, we're adding value.
Right. Yep. And I think, if you want to be successful in promoting what you do, you really have to get out of your own head and into theirs. Right.
So that's a great question. How do you do that when, like, it's one thing to say we could do it while we're speaking, but where you do the heavy lifting is in the messaging and the work prior to actually getting out and speaking. How do you help someone, with that, to gain that clarity and get the zone at that time?
Mm-hmm. There's really a couple of things that I like to share with people. And it's, number one is you have to be clear about what it is you want to do, right? You have to be clear about why are you even doing what you're doing? Because, people get up, and you and I, we've seen hundreds of speakers, right? And people get up there and they're literally phoning it in. You can tell from the stage, they don't want to be there. They got a script and they're just reading it, and that's what it is. When I work with my clients, I don't teach them to read from a script. I want them to have one so they can refer to it, but mm-hmm. I want a conversation. And I think that's one of the keys to getting into the, let's just say, not into the head of, but being in the awareness of your audience. And the biggest thing is, listen, you're not talking to them, you're having a conversation with them. And I think as soon as you flip that coin, you flip that switch, and there are strategies to actually engage a conversation while teaching. And that's kind of one of the things that I show them to do. But once you make it a conversation, it becomes more interactive. It forces you to be aware of what's going on for the people that are listening. It forces you to know, wow, they're excited about this, let me keep going. Or they're bored as crap about this, maybe I should change the subject. Or they look really confused right now, maybe I should say that again, because that was important. But if you're not aware of what's going on with the people that you're talking to, you don't know when they're confused, you don't know when they're unhappy, and you just go through your checklist of stuff to do, and your results are going to suck every time because you didn't pay attention to what was going on. And part of that is, people will say they're intuitive or they're empathic and they feel other people. That's great if you're one of those people. I am not by design. I wasn't born empathic. I wasn't born intuitive, but I've learned that there are strategies that you can do to truly pay attention to what's going on for other people and how they're feeling. Are they nodding their head as you're talking, or do they kind of start talking with each other? There are little things that you can look for, so you can train yourself to really make sure that you're audience focused rather than information focused. And I think that's a big distinction.
Yeah, one of the guys that my first speaker coaches, Johnny Wimbry, he refers to it as listening to the listening, so that you're kind of putting.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah, and so that's fortunately one of the things that I what you just shared is that's the terminology I was taught, but it's the same thing. It's like really connecting and understanding what is being received, and although the challenge is, and here's too that like kind of getting a little into the hot dog and how it's made. When cell phones came out, did you at first start thinking, like when you saw people down on their phone, you're like, oh, they're distracted? Or were you initially, did you already know, oh, they're taking notes? Like what was...
That one still gets me a little bit. And it's usually not on their phones, but it's on, like, they've got a little iPad and they're taking notes on an iPad. That I've actually learned that one happens. But as far as the phones go, they're usually not taking notes on a phone in my experience. They're usually doing other stuff. I mean, it's maybe 3% of the time they're actually note-taking on a phone. It's not that easy to do, especially at like the speed with which, the average person teaches. So yeah, they're not paying attention, and I get that, but that's, there's another thing I call about as-ising it, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody's on their phone, I'm going to go, hey, what are you doing? Is that important? And you call attention to it, and you draw their attention back in a nice way. You're not going to be a real ball buster about it, right. But you do it in a way that says, listen, you came here. Why not? You ordered a pie. Why not get the whole pie? Not just 7 of the 8 slices, right?
For sure.
So, and I'll make, you probably saw me do it at our event. If people are not paying attention, I will call out, I will bring attention to them. Mm-hmm. And that way everybody knows, all right, we should probably pay attention to this guy.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a great strategy to get everyone on the same page. And the other thing with the listening to the listening, have you experienced this? Because I had other experiences in my life that it was sort of a notice, but sometimes the way people listen, like an auditory learner may not necessarily look like they're paying as much attention because they might have their eyes closed, or they might be because they're using some technique to stay focused and listen. And they come up to you and you go think, oh, this person's like not paying attention. They come up to you, go, oh my gosh, that was the best thing I heard.
That doesn't happen very often for me.
Okay.
And part of it, you were in my workshop. So, I understand that people learn in different ways. There are visual learners, there are auditory learners, there are kinesthetic learners. I language things in a way that tags into all types of those learners. And I have visual components to my teaching. I have auditory components of my teaching.
Right.
We have interactions, which makes it a kinesthetic type of a component to teaching. So, I always teach people, listen, you have to be able to talk to everybody in a way that they want to hear the message.
Right.
Not in the way that you want to give the message, because we all have our own predispositions. I'm very visual, right? So I want to see stuff that's going on rather than hear about it. But I want you to teach in a way that you kind of connect with each one of those people. So it's always funny that, you'll have people of all these disparate backgrounds, races, creeds, religions, sexual orientations, whatever it is, and they all get a message from what I say, but it's a different message.
Right.
Because it hit them in a way that they could receive it. But part of that is the skill of the trainer, right?
Right.
Being able to, actually give that information in a way that multiple different types of learners or cultures or races or creeds or everything can actually hear it. And
right.
that's the skill, right? That's the little extra stuff that you need to keep in mind.
Of course. I mean, I bring a lot of NLP into the way I work to cover all the modalities. And then obviously we do the breakthroughs and all of that. It's just in that listening, I sometimes we don't want to judge. We want to be too hard, and we want to be present, but not necessarily think that we're not being as effective because someone may be expressing themselves in a way that, then we put our model of the world and go, well, I would be doing this if I were hearing this message or what have you. And again, it's that presence and being grounded in service, not about ego and
Right.
concerned of what it looks like necessarily, because if it's too perfected as well, then there's an element of, okay, well, now that how am I going to be able to apply something or do something when it looks too good?
Right. And that's why I think authenticity is so important, right? I'll give my clients the steps or the pieces, but what they fill in to deliver is completely theirs. Like, I don't give them the words to say. I may help them rephrase it a little bit, but I want everybody to speak like as if we're having a conversation right now.
Right.
If I'm up on stage, it pretty much sounds just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a little practice, because you want to be perfect, right? We all want to look good on stage, and we all want people to like us, and we all want to sound like it's all perfect and there's no ums or uhs or I forgot what I was going to say kind of thing. But that's not how human beings are. And I think if you really want to connect with people, you have to be willing to let them see who you are, without, not the perfect version, not the Facebook version of who you are,
Right.
the actual version of who you are.
You talked about ums and ahs and that kind of thing. Did you ever do Toastmasters, or in your journey of perfecting and mastering or, enhancing your speaking prowess, what were some of the stages you went through?
I kind of had a weirder journey than most people. And no, I didn't do Toastmasters or any of that. I've actually gone and taught at Toastmasters, but I never took Toastmasters. I went from being a student of personal development and attending multiple courses to being invited to speak for the company that I had been learning from. And from there, I just had this blessing, this amazing opportunity to literally, I mean thousands of hours in front of groups of people, gradually taking on more and more, learning more and more. And at that point, I just started to learn from other masters, right? People who I admired, who I was working alongside of. I would take their workshops or their courses to learn some new techniques and strategies. And it was just pure, just hours and hours and hours of practice. And as many hours as I have in front of the stage, I probably have twice as many before I got on the stage, practicing, rehearsing, going over what I was going to say, kind of trying to memorize for the sake of understanding material. So, there's no getting around the fact that you got to put in the work, right? I don't think anybody is born a great speaker. I don't think there's anybody that can't be one either. Once you get past your mindset of, yeah, you know what, I can do this. And the structure of it, the steps, once you understand them, it's like, oh my God, this makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
But before you do it, it's just this complete chaos, and you have no idea how anybody looks that competent on stage. And then when I show them the steps, they're like, oh, that's how you do that. And that's why, this happened. And so there's a strategy to it, but you have to bring in your willingness to learn. I just listened to a really old CD from somebody, and I won't put his name in because he's not so well liked these days, but he had some great information at the time. And he talks about a teachability index, and he talks about your willingness to learn and your willingness to be coached. Right. And I think that's all you need to get better at being a non-professional speaker, right? Because I used to be like a speaker's coach, and people had called me the speaker's trainer, because I taught a lot of people that had big stages and talked to thousands of people. They would hire me to be their coach. But what I really love doing is I like working with business owners, teaching them how to promote their businesses and how to do that effectively. And I lost track of what I was talking about.
Well, we were talking about the like how you learned, where you had no Toastmasters, and then
no Toastmasters. Yeah. But it was all about those skills. And I think anybody can do it as long as you're willing to put in that practice, and as long as you're willing to be teachable, right? And And you learn not to be a professional speaker, but to speak like a professional. And the challenge that professionals have, especially really smart people, so the people that have advanced degrees, the people that are doctors and lawyers and dentists and chiropractors and physical therapists and massage therapists and like, you know, the all financial planners, the problem they have is that they're too smart. And they think if I'm going to deliver value, I have to just tell them all this information, and they just fire hose information all over people. And it just confuses them and doesn't inspire them anyway. You know, so part of the thing that I teach is teach less, just do it better, and people will respond more.
Well, and that's so true, that the best speakers generally don't give tons and tons of information. They're delivering an experience. And then people remember that. So they remember the 2 or 3 points because it was entertaining, it was effective, it was applicable, and it wasn't a fire hose. And there is a strategy to that. And also, you know, not to say, you know, it's not about dumbing it down, but in those environments, sometimes it can be very difficult to take on very complex things because people have so many different perspectives on it, and there's going to be so many questions around it. If you teach a more simple concept, people can then extrapolate later on that. And it's it's such a
my big thing is, you know, I always say, you know, I really teach, you know, I give like 3 nuggets when I introduce this, and the middle one is less is more. Just teach a few you say, you know, actionable items. Teach them something that they can actually take home and improve their lives with.
Right.
Just even if it's one thing, just do it well and teach them, you know, give them a solution. It may not be the entire solution because they're going to pay you for the entire solution, but give them a solution to something so you didn't waste their time. There's nothing that pisses me off more than going to a workshop to learn something, and all I do is get partial things that are totally useless unless I pay the guy for the rest.
Right.
Like, you just wasted my hour and a half. You could have just asked me if I wanted to buy it right away, and I would have told you yes or no and saved myself an hour of agony. You know, if you're going to teach people, then help them. Do something good for them at the same time.
Well, and the good news is, I think for the most part, that is starting to change. I think that people are getting real savvy to that, and people are not overly enthusiastic about wasting their time anymore the way they had in the past. So it's certainly, I think, vetting some of those situations. But now here's something interesting. You shared you're doing an online program. Now you're creating an online program. How much of your speaking prior to this situation was offline versus online, and how have you been shifting, and where do you see it going, and how are you planning on the new adjustments?
Well, prior to this, it was predominantly, I would say 90% of it was live, right? Live rooms, live events. Now it's, you know, part of it will be recorded online. So there'll be material that's evergreen and that's there. But I think, you know, where I feel that I deliver the most value, and this is where I think the biggest success is going to come in the future for marketing and business growth, is live online, right? So listen, COVID has changed the way we think. It's changed the way we have to do things. So, you know, I talk about virtually speaking, right? Some people are going to do it out of choice, and some are going to do it out of necessity. Right now, it's out of necessity. Right. In the future, whether you choose to do it out of choice or not is up to you. But I think there are a lot of benefits to actually doing like we're doing right now with a Zoom call, right? We're live. It's completely interactive. I see you, you see me. We can tell whether one another are paying attention. So why couldn't you do a workshop with 10 or 20 or 30 people on there? And, you know, and I actually like smaller workshops. I don't want to see 100 little dots on my screen. I'd rather have 10 people that I can deliver individual attention to. You know, the subtitle for that book, Non-Professionally Speaking, is how professionals use small talks to create big profits. Just talking to 5 or 10 people at a time will show value, will enable you to build a lot of rapport, because it's not 100 people you're talking to or 1,000 people on a webinar. It's 10 human beings who can see each other, who are going to interact with one another. And it is one of the most effective ways to execute what I refer to as value marketing. You deliver value while you teach about what you do and how you help. And then at the end, you just say, listen, if you want to work with me, there's more that you want to do, hey, here's the link. This is what you do next. That's it. It's real simple.
How you say you were doing most of the 90% live doing that. How have you found the transition? How much have you been doing of that virtually? Were you teaching other people virtually, and has the, for good or for bad, the familiarity with this platform and this ability, has that impacted the response rate? Are people now more open to it, or are they going, is it saturated? Like, what has your experience been with it?
There is a saturation with online, and I'm sure you've seen it too, right? Because everybody went online. It seemed like the internet slowed down overnight, right? Because of so many people online, and sometimes Zoom works, sometimes it was getting overwhelmed until they caught up with the technology. What I found is that the clients and the people that I reach actually like this, right? They don't have to travel. So, if I held an event in Las Vegas or in Los Angeles or in Orlando, people would need to get on a plane. In addition to the cost of my workshop, they'd have to book a hotel room. They'd have to buy all their food. Now we can do shorter, and I don't try to do a 12-hour day on a Zoom meeting.
Right.
That doesn't work anymore. So there's some adaptation going on. But you could do 2 or 3 hour segments a few times a week, and you can maintain attention that long on a Zoom meeting. And a lot of it also boils down to, Doug, setting context. You have to let them know, listen, I want you to treat this as if we're together. So put everything else away, close your door, tell the wife and kids you're not to be bothered for 3 months. Make sure you walk the dog before we get started, and let's jump in, because we're not stopping. We're going to take one break to let you go to the bathroom, and we're back. This is the real deal, folks.
Right.
But I think you have to set that up. You have to, this is what I do. This is how you're going to get the benefit that you want, and this is what it's going to take. And if you let people know that, many of them are really grateful for it. They're comfortable. Sure. They get to sit in a comfortable chair in their own home. They don't have to spend the money on travel. And as soon as it's done, they're right where they need to be to action the things that you taught them about. So I've had a lot of positive response to being online.
And how about some of the keynotes? Have they moved over to online, or are they?
Not yet. I read about it, and I've seen that there are people that are supposedly doing it. I don't really know how many actually are doing it, and I don't know. But it hasn't been that way for me.
It's still early in the game. I was curious if you think that would be become a norm, a standard, or.
It may, and then it might be like a recorded keynote too. So that way they can get, for large corporations, they can record the keynote and then distribute it to all their offices, and they can watch it and make it a viewing thing. To be honest, that's, I do keynotes, but it's not what I love to do, right? It's fun. It was very lucrative to do it, and it was easy, especially when I lived in Vegas, and half of the ones were in hotels that were 5 minutes from my home, 10 minutes from my home. So, you go, you speak for 90 minutes, and, 20 minutes later, I'm on my couch with my feet up, catching a ball game. That was nice.
Right.
But there's not a lot of satisfaction. There's not as much satisfaction as there is to, working with, I had an attorney that I worked with who sent me a testimony that said, after your workshop, I did 2 talks and it added $100,000 to my firm's bottom line.
Sweet.
There's a lot more like, that's pretty cool. I had a woman from, she's practices up in Canada, and she sent me, I still think yours was the best course I ever took, which was like, wow, that's kind of nice. She goes, I think this is one of the reasons why I've completely sailed through this coronavirus.
Beautiful.
And I'm like, while everybody else is shutting down and their businesses they're like, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. She's doing great. And she's thanking me for it because she's still using the same strategy. And she does it online, and she's been doing it online for a while now.
So that's a great distinction. So for anyone who, is listening and there was some concern because that maybe, it doesn't work as effectively online. You have, case studies to prove that the concepts that you teach are sound. It's not about, the how you're necessarily speaking. And when we touched earlier on, are we engaging the auditories and the kinesthetics and the visuals, and are we creating those things all of that stuff that we do translates. Now there are some shifts to do online, but
definitely. And I teach that too.
Right. But the fundamentals are still there.
The fundamentals have to be there.
Yeah.
You miss any of those fundamentals and you're not going to be as successful as you can. There's no doubt about it. And what happens is people think they're going to go out, and I've seen even really good speakers, and they go out and they say, well, I'm just going to wing it. And your results are showing exactly that. There is planning that goes into it. I know that it's authentic, and I want you to sound and be authentic, but I also want you to check all the boxes along the way. And that's what people miss. If you don't execute the strategy properly, your results are going to suffer. And it's going to end up in two places. Number one, it's going to end up in your bank account, right? Because you're not going to have the money going in. The reason you're not going to have the money is because you're not helping anybody, because they haven't decided, they haven't trusted you enough. They don't believe that you can help them enough to take that next step. So, because you didn't do your job right.
Right. So what are some sort of keys that you found in helping with that clarity, or do you have some little tricks that you have that help position someone outside of a commodity into desirability? Because
sure.
At the end of the day, that's really what we've got to do, is cut through the noise.
Well, let me share three things that I think the people that are listening right now can actually use, because I don't want you to waste your time either. The first thing is this: you have to open strong. And here's what I mean by that. Right at the beginning, when you're introducing yourself to somebody, they're going to make a decision pretty quickly whether or not to trust you, whether or not you can help them, whether or not they should believe you. Right away, they're going to make a decision about you. The very beginning of your talk as a speaker, especially new speakers, is usually when they're the most nervous. So if the very first impression that somebody gets of you is that you're nervous, then immediately the trust and confidence factor goes way down. The likelihood of converting a sale and helping that person also goes way down. So what I say is you got to open strong. That's the one key that you have to work on over. You have to craft your story. You have to trim it down. You have to make it sharp. It has to sound confident, and it has to sound authentic right off the beginning to capture the attention, build rapport, and gain trust immediately. And there's like a whole series of steps that have to go in there, but you got to be really strong at the beginning. The second thing is, remember what we talked about before, Doug and I. Less is more. Don't overwhelm them with information. It's just too much stuff. They're going to get overwhelmed, and overwhelmed people do nothing because they don't know where to start. They get confused. And by the way, confused people don't buy either. Right. So remember, less is more. Choose your best 2 or 3 points. If you're going to speak for a half hour, 45 minutes, limit it to 2 or 3 main topics and teach them well, and give them something that they can actually use when they log off, when they're done. And the last thing is, and this is the part where everybody makes a mistake in selling, is they think, I want to sell something, so I'm going to list everything that's in there. And I'm going to list my workshops and my seminars and my private Facebook group and this, and you're going to get these newsletters and you're going to get the cheat sheets, and they list all the stuff. And then what they do is they list all the features of what they do. It's just a list of what's included. And people aren't really as interested in that as they're interested in this, the benefits. What will those features do for me, the listener? So the final keys, number 1 is open strong. Number 2, less is more. The last one, number 3, close with the benefits, not features. Focus on how what you do will help change their lives. You're going to change their financial life. You're going to change their timing, the way they utilize their time or are able to, or you're going to improve their lifestyle. You're going to give them a better life, the ability to travel, more leisure, or you're going to give them more money or more financial freedom, or you're going to give them more free time or time to spend with their family or be able to choose when they work. That's what people want. They want to know how what you do is going to change their lives. You have to be able to explain how what you do will give them the things that they want.
And on that note, and again, a little bit in the hot dog here, is how important then is a value stack? Is that usually only done when people are not strong in their benefit delivery and they don't feel like they could do that, so they spend all their time on the value stack? Is that something that is a byproduct of, well, because so-and-so does that and that's like, kind of like the norm and it worked for them? Like, how do you determine
the value stack? Listen, there are a lot of marketing, let's say, call them marketing tricks out there, right? There are a lot of things that incentivize people to take action, and the value stack, where they just stack all the values on there, that will attract some people. That being said, Doug, if you watch people who use value stacking and the good speakers, not only do they value stack, but they also explain the benefits of each members, right? So they're doing both of those things at the same time, which is great, brilliant. Listen, I want you to include a value stack too. I want them to know what they're going to. Now, listen, if what you have is one thing, then that's what you got. Right. Explain the benefits of that one thing. Right. But if you've got 5 different components, well, feel free to stack them up, but explain the benefit of each component. Like, hey, listen, we're going to have a live teleseminar. It's 2 hours every week. Now, why this is so important is because I'm going to be able to make sure you understand, right? So number 1 is I have a live thing. Number 2 is why it's important, so that I make sure you understand when we're doing it. Second thing, now at the end of every week, we have a live hot seat Q&A. And what that is, that's the opportunity for you to say, hey, listen, I tried this stuff, but I had a problem pop up. How do we handle it? And it enables you to be ready for the next week and make sure that you've really locked it in, that you own the information. So every time I add something in my list, I'm going to explain why that's a good thing to have. And that's the benefit side of it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Because I wanted to pull that out of you, because I oftentimes see people focus on that, like you shared, boom, 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 here, feature, because it's like going to a restaurant and getting a big plate and you feel like you got a value. Oh, look, I got this huge plate of food. But, if we don't do it right, it's a huge plate of crap food instead of like a very balanced, nourishing, like amazing meal. It's just because it's a buffet and they've got everything on it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good one.
Right. And then people, not only the value stack, but then they put those interesting prices next to each one. This is worth $7,000. This is worth. By the end of the day, you've got these 21 features worth $157,000, but today and today only $997. Right. And that's just crap. And everybody knows it and smells it now too. So, listen, just let people know what you do and how much it costs. So yeah, it's a great question. Have you ever had that thought that because everyone is looking for that price drop, like that they're so conditioned to whatever price is given there's going to be a discount. And even when someone will say, and we've seen this happen, they say, that's it, bottom line, I'm just telling you, this is the price. That's it. I don't reduce it. I don't do anything. They do it. And then they go, but tonight only. Like there's, yeah, I get it.
Right. I mean, so have you ever had that moment where you thought about it? Like, should I do a reduction or should I just kind of hold true and go, look, this is the price, that's that. And sorry. I'm not a giant fan of that. And what I think though, is you can have comparison prices, right? So if I'm going to, and I coach independently. So if a professional trainer hires me to coach him, it's a lot of money for a couple of days. So we do 2 days together. That's really it. And then they get follow up with me after that. But it's tens of thousands of dollars for the 2 days.
So my per hour coaching rate is about $2,000 an hour to coach with me. That's a legitimate, I'm not making that number up.
Mhm.
It's not inflated, and I'm not saying it because, ooh, he's the man. It just is what it is. But if I'm going to do a workshop for a group of people, I'm not going to treat them as if I'm charging them all individually that same amount. So I'm able to make it more affordable for them
Mhm.
to get the same level of coaching at a better price. And that's what I call comparison pricing,
Got it.
right? You're getting a service that other people will pay $2,000 an hour for, and you're getting it for half that or a quarter of that, for the amount of hours that you're getting.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is a legitimate, and it's an honest, authentic way to say that and to provide a deal and let them know why, right? Listen, there's 10 of you in this room. I don't need to charge you all individually for teaching the same thing at the same time.
Mhm.
So how about if we just make it more affordable for you? Would that be okay? And people are good with that.
Right.
And but you do need to establish your value. And that's part of the sales process that I work through people about establishing the value. But that doesn't happen at the end. That should have happened way in the middle or in the beginning of your talk. And, it's important to understand how you work that into your presentation so that it puts in their mind like, oh, wow, this is valuable. This is something that I would want. But again, that's a little more granular for what people need to understand.
No, of course, of course. So with all that in consideration now, with these interesting times, have you adjusted your pricing, or are you, because there've been different schools, different camps. Some people going like, well, no, why would I do that? Like, this is the service is the service, and others have, kind of modified. And it's usually circumstantial, of course, but how have you addressed all of the craziness currently?
I've raised my prices.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Number one, I'm actually able to deliver more value online than I was when I was traveling
Mhm.
because I get to expand it over a longer period of time, giving people a little more opportunity to absorb the information. I'm also giving them more personal contact with me over the time frame. So it's as if they're not only getting the information, but then getting, hey, can you help me put it into place in what I'm doing on here? So, I don't think just because it's online, listen, like you said, your skill is your skill and your talent is your talent. Only you and the people listening right now, only you're going to decide what you're worth. And it's not a matter of time. I'm always like, people trade time for money. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of value.
Mm-hmm.
And your ability to message that value is what's going to determine your market value. Right.
Oh.
If you can message your value properly, if you can do it like an expert, if you let people know this is how your life will be different after I work with you, well, then you're going to command a higher price, a higher fee for your services. But if you're terrible at conveying your value, you can't give your services away.
Right.
And and that's what I want people to understand. You may all have amazing services, and I believe that each and every one of you does have a service that's really valuable to some people.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know who you are, and they don't believe that you can help them, and that's a messaging problem, and that's what I work with.
Well, and yeah, as I was sharing earlier, when I worked with Tony, when I left working with Tony, and it was all good terms. He said, "Look, Doug, remember, you're not a coach, you're not a trainer, you're not a speaker, you're not an author. You are a marketer of your coaching, speaking, training, and books." And I still need to remind myself of that because, oftentimes, I could be the plumber with the leaky sink because, we get into this where we love doing the work so much, the marketing aspect, the messaging, some of those other things, it's sometimes hard to change the hat.
Yeah.
In some sense.
And the real interesting thing is that I heard somebody gave me a great expression just yesterday. It was a colleague of mine, and we were kind of collaborating on something. And we talked about the marketing part of it and about how, listen, when I work with a client, like they tell me something, and like in a second, I'm like, all right, this is how you say it. This is how you market it. Boom, 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 boom. And it's like, oh my God, like a light bulb goes off for them, right? I can't do it for myself. And she said, The expression she uses, you can't read the label from the inside of the jar.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's why I think, even me, like when I need some advice, and I'm an expert marketer. I'm really great at marketing. Now, I'm not great at internet marketing. I'm not an internet marketer. I'm not a Facebook guy. I don't do that. There are technical people that can do that. But when it comes to marketing messages, I'm really great at that. I'm really great at that mostly for other people. So sometimes I actually need to, bounce ideas off of people like you and some of my colleagues and my friends to go, what do you think is the best way? Because I'm too close to my own stuff, right?
And we personalize it too, because we get so attached to a certain way. And like sometimes we, even to the point where it sounds horrible, but like using a picture from 30 years ago. Like, yeah, but it's a good picture. Yeah, but it's
picture. Yeah. I look great there.
Yeah. So, we have to adjust and adapt and get that feedback to say, hey, even I'm sure some of the work that you do when we talk about saturation and expectations and, how often are you potentially working with people to tweak their messaging because of new patterns, new trends, new, experiences or new delivery systems?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I work with experienced professionals too, very often it's subtle differences that they just need to make small changes, that they have a great message or a great product, but they're missing key components of the delivery and they just never knew it, right? They just knew, I'm not selling as much as everybody else. I don't understand why. I don't understand why my numbers are down. It's because they were just missing something that they never thought of. It's sort of that, I don't know what I don't know thing, right? It never occurred to me to think that way, and I love when I have those moments, by the way. I love when I learn something, like somebody mentions something, go, my God, I didn't even know that existed. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool. And I want to be that guy for other people, right? But I need that guy for me. I need somebody that does that for me too.
Well, and I think that's instructive. I think a lot of people think that some of the people who are successful don't have coaches, and they're the ones who have the most coaches. And it's so funny now how they get their coaching could be different, because when you're playing at a different level, sometimes your cohorts are playing at a level where they could just offer some great feedback. And there's an understanding there that it's like a professional courtesy, like, hey, I'm doing this for you because you do it for me. And we have that. And there's also people we pay. That is one of the most important key aspects, is that people do need to invest in themselves. And if they want to, speed their process up, is surround themselves with people who are experts in their field. And, if they don't pay, they're not going to necessarily apply.
Right. And I'm just going to throw out a little brain bomb with what you just said. If you're listening right now, and if you're not willing to pay for coaching or for services from other people, what would ever make you think that someone's going to pay you for your services, right? It doesn't happen like that. If you're not.
Yeah, no, I took on a high, a while ago, a high ticket coach for that very reason. Because there was a part of me like, well, if I'm not willing to do those high, like I've done, Tony, like all the events and, a few thousand here and there. And, over the course of my career, thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, like aggregately, but never like one time, like, okay, here's a 5-figure, hire. And I was like, I got to do that because I can't with confidence believe that someone else would do it if I wouldn't do it.
Right.
And, it's such it's so true. It goes a long way.
Right. And, and I really believe that the information that you get from coaches that have those, there's a difference between a high ticket product and a high value product, right? And, a lot of people sell high ticket items that are just fluff, but the people that truly have really good information very often do have higher prices.
Right.
And, there's that old adage, you get what you pay for, right? If you want great advice, sometimes you're going to pay a great price, but it also comes with a great return on investment. It's one of the reasons that I like working with professionals, and not really, the small, like professional service, because their return on investment is so high. You know, if I just teach you how to message what you do to convert 3 sales, more than cover what you pay me to learn it. And then you get to keep that skill forever. You know, with an attorney, one client could generate $50,000, $40,000. The return on investment is so spectacularly huge. And it's so much fun for me to see it happen.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's the psycho remuneration that we get when we do this kind of work. When we see it like applying, it's like, oh, they're working it. It's great. Do you have
Let us show everybody. Look what they wrote.
Right.
The phone book's here. The phone book's here.
Right. Do you have a like, I know you said service, but is there particular groups that you have the most affinity for? Is it?
It's mostly legal and medical professionals. So doctors and lawyers, you know, like, and that includes like massage therapists and PTs, you know, chiros and dentists, and, you know, all kinds of medical doctors and all branches of the legal profession. I do a lot of work with attorneys, and as a chiropractor, you know, I was a chiropractor for 23 years. So I have a lot of affinity with the doctors that I work with too. You know, I understand what it takes to talk about what you do with a patient and how to convey that value. So those are kind of, that's where I find myself gravitating to the most, but I don't know that I actually have a favorite, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. When it comes to, and I guess part of then what you're doing is the messaging isn't always necessarily for the groups as much as also being able to message to even an individual client, right? I mean, because
well, that's interesting. It works both ways. What you're going to find is that once you learn how to, if you can sell to a group, you can sell to a single person,
right?
And there's a psychology to sales, and there's a strategy to sales, and there's a system to sales, and you must know that system in front of a group. But it's the same system one-on-one. It's the same, you know, you must demonstrate value and build trust. You must establish like social verification. You have to overcome objections and then demonstrate return on investment. If you do those things, you'll get the sale without having to push or without having to do anything. But if you miss any of those keys, it's not going to happen. And the same thing is true with a sit-down sales conversation or a one-on-one. But if you're going to sell, why not sell to 10 people at the same time instead of just one person? It's a much better use of your time. And, you know, and listen, you may not convert 10 out of 10, but, you know, Victoria and I do live events, and we've done events for attorneys and for medical professionals with anywhere from like maybe 15 people, 12 people, 20 people in a room. The last time we did a room with 11 people, we had 9 sales.
Wow. That's great.
It's a pretty high, that's a high rate. But what happens is I have them in a room with me for a day or so, or, you know, I have time to build rapport. I have time to establish my credibility and then to demonstrate the benefit of what I do. You know, with, you know, even with online, you know, you can do that with a 45-minute webinar. You could do it with a live Zoom meeting and then say, listen, I'd love to talk to you more about it. Hey, ring me up. Let's get on the phone. We'll talk about what kind of strategies could we put in place for your business. Again, it's another opportunity to solidify your value and create a sales relationship between the two of you.
So I want to then cue in on that, is that some of the work you're doing, you are helping entrepreneurs, business owners, service providers, even design their webinar and like really hit all of the ways that messaging can happen. I understand, you know, you're not Facebook, right? Not a Facebook guru. You're not, you know, a social media guru, but in the conversation of messaging and influence, that applies to webinars, it applies to small talks, it even applies to already having someone come and pay you, and then now next step. So you could
Right.
have maybe someone who does they're kind of plateauing, doing their 1 or 2 day event, and they're unable to convert them into the moving forward to whatever the next opportunity is.
Exactly. So planning out, we in the industry we would call it your funnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have next to offer somebody? And the real, the first question with all of that though, Doug, is do you have something else to offer?
Right.
Right? Because maybe, listen, you were good at this and that's what you sold and I'm not there yet. Well, in that case, go learn something, right? Go take a course, learn something more so that you can bring that to your people and help more people.
Well, and I think it's instructive as well, is that I'm sure with your conversations, you probably helped people realize they had more to offer that they didn't even realize was available to them. Meaning,
Yeah, a lot of people.
There's a product right there, and they go, I never thought about that.
Yeah, that's the conversation. The person that I was collaborating with, that talked about how you can't see your value from inside the jar. I gave her. She was doing something, and she wanted to kind of branch into working with medical professionals and doctors. And I go, why would you do this? She had this whole big, complicated, elaborate system all ready to go. And I was like going, and I had to just stop her. I go, well, let me ask a question. What's your goal? Like, what do you want to accomplish? And I think people get into talking without knowing what they want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. So I said, stop for a second. What is it that you want to accomplish? And she was like, well, I want to, establish some value and get them to have a call with us. I said, do you think it takes like a 24-hour program over 5 weeks for them to get the trust? Or do you think you might be able to do that with like a 2-hour presentation? And she was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. You're right. Because it was like this. And I said, and trust me, I don't know any doctors, none of my colleagues, none of my friends would want to sit through a 20-hour program. They want a 1 hour, a 2-hour program that they can just nibble away at and then be ready to move on. So it's, again, she didn't even realize that she had this in place, but you're right. And I'm sure you do it with your clients too. You see the value they have very often more than they see of themselves, right? And it's really difficult for as human beings, I think, for us to truly acknowledge our value. That's one of the reasons it says in that amazing introduction that you gave me, by the way, it says teaching them the art of shameless self-promotion.
Right.
We're so taught, don't be a boast, don't toot your own horn, you should be seen and not heard. And, don't be so proud of yourself, or you're an egomaniac. And what we've done is we've taken our gifts and we've learned to hide them. And then we start to believe that, and then we don't even realize that we have them anymore. And, for you, I'm sure when you work with other people, Doug, you see the gift that they don't even realize. Like, you see that they're an intuitive person, or that they're caring, or that they're really creative, and they don't believe that of themselves. And the same is true. Like, when I work with people, I see ways that they could use what they already have to serve people in a way that they didn't think of. It's like that, what they didn't know thing.
Yep.
But again, I have people that help me with that still. There's a lot of stuff that I know how to use of mine. And believe me, I know how to repurpose stuff, and I know how to apply it and share it with different groups and all that. I get it. But every once in a while, I'll sit down with people that are playing a bigger game than I am. And hopefully there'll always be people playing a bigger game than me, because that's how I learn. Mm-hmm. And then I get this like nugget, and then it sits in my brain like, oh my God, I can't wait to use that. Because there's an excitement to that mm-hmm. newness. There's an excitement to realizing something you didn't know before.
Oh, 100%. And that's the gift of, and I put it out there. Like, I was at the event that you were training at, and I was a guest, and, there to look at meeting. But so many times I've gone up to speakers, I just want to put it out there that it's okay when you go to an event and you see someone speaking to go up and say hello. And most people, with the exception of guys like Tony Robbins or whatever, that they can't handle the amount of people.
And his security force.
Right. But most speakers are very accessible to just go, hey, I want to learn more. And we're all very happy to, support, because we need people to be successful. We need people to go out there and be, the best version of themselves. Otherwise, we're not serving. Yeah. And right. I just want to put it out there that, you are obviously very gracious and, we've become, friendly. I just want to put it out there that like, it's okay. Most people do that when you see someone, because I think a lot of people miss out on opportunities to grow because they're afraid to even reach out to ask a question, say, hey, I'm just curious, I have a question. It doesn't mean that the first thing someone's going to do is try and sell them. They're just like, no, yeah, dude, tell me what you got going on. And
what's going on?
Yeah.
Listen, some of the biggest breakthroughs that people have in the events, like the one that you were at that I do, are with people that do come up to me during a break and they say, hey, this is what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And, and I see the solution right away because it's what we do. And it's a conversation that we have, and it's like 5 minutes. And it's like, well, how about this? Did you ever think of trying this and this and this and this? And they're like, oh my God, that totally, but if they didn't come up, they'd never get the information. It's that I think people protect their reputation, right? They don't want to appear stupid. Like, I don't want to ask that dumb question of this guy that looks so cool, the guy that's leading the room. I don't want to be like an idiot because he'll look down on me. No, he won't, right? More than likely, true teachers appreciate those questions.
Right.
It's what gives value to what we do. And ask them. Be willing to ask those questions.
Right, because there's no stupid questions, just stupid people.
No, I've heard.
No, it's the other way around. But so, and that's the thing too, is that, the reason why we do this is because we love people. So to not have that opportunity is also kind of crazy. So, for our friends out there, don't deny someone that gift of connecting more deeply with someone, because you never know what new opportunities are going to come from it.
Right. And you mentioned something earlier, which I love. You know what? Just be curious of people. People always said, what did you love about chiropractic? And it wasn't, adjusting people's spines, and it wasn't helping them. I liked those things too. What I really liked was when people came in and they were in a room with me one-on-one, I would ask them about what they did. I was just so curious about, what do you do for a living? How does that work? one of my favorite patients worked in a metal recycling plant, and he used to teach me and talk to me about how the recycling system worked. I used to love when he came in, just because I was curious to learn about who they were and what they did. And not only, for me, it was just genuine curiosity from my point, but it also, as a side effect, created a relationship and a trust and a bond between the doctor patient, right? That was on a more human level. And it's, often why they got better faster, I think. It's because there was a trust, and they came and they believed, and, it was a place to feel good. Be willing to be curious, be willing to ask people questions, be willing to connect. And for a lot of people, we hide or people hide on Facebook. They hide with this anonymity of third party. I'm just going to DM you and message you. And there's not a lot of connection there. And I think, what COVID may have done that's really beneficial is given people the opportunity to actually hybrid the virtual with the real to create a connection here.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Heidi and I were already hybriding it, but what this time did give us an opportunity to create new product, to revamp what we were doing, because now we had some time and improve what we were doing. There's a lot of stuff we're like, when we get a chance. And now it's like, well, we got the chance, let's do it. I mean, this show was born out of that as well, because it's something I always wanted to do, and it's what I do normally, is just have these conversations. I was like, man, but if this can make a difference in other people's lives, and they could find a nugget that helps them transform and start taking action right now, and maybe even, add more value to other people's lives at the same time, like, everybody's winning. And, I believe, what you said there, I think the challenge in the world right now is there is not enough curiosity. And it's people doubling down when things are uncertain into what they know, instead of being okay with, let me go learn.
Let me go learn. It's a good chance, a good time to do it. Listen, there's for people that are listening, there's a lot of stuff going on out there, politically, health wise, socially, there's just a lot of things that need healing, and a lot of you have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for you to stop being afraid, be willing to learn something new, be willing to learn how to message your value, and then start making a difference. Instead of complaining about it, get out there and do something about it. And you're not going to be able to do anything about it unless people know what you can do.
Yeah.
And it's your job to tell them. And that's what my mission is, to help you get the confidence to just tell people what you can do.
Love it. So if someone wants to work with you, wants to learn more about you, wants to, get deeper into the non-professionally speaking, how would one do so?
Hey, I have a special report. It's like 24 pages of, number one, it's the 6 keys. And we talked about, 2 of them were the passion and promotion, but It talks about the 6 elements that you have to have in place to promote your business successfully. And it also has a whole list of like 64 places where you can use the stuff. It's a great download for you to just learn something good for yourself and a little bit about me. And then there are some links in there if you want to have a master class, or there's a link in there to get in touch with me. That'd be the best way to do it. And the easiest way to go there is just go to www.smalltalksbigprofits.com.
Love it. Smalltalksbigprofits.com. I can do my radio voice.
It.
Small Talks.
Bigprofits.com.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for sharing incredible nuggets. If people want more, go to smalltalksbigprofits.com. It'll be in the description in both YouTube and in all the podcast resources, and we'll put it in the comments here in Facebook. But dude, I appreciate you so much. And any final thoughts before we sign off?
Doug, listen, we met for the first time at that event a few months ago, and it's really been a pleasure to be in touch with you soon. I love what you're doing here. I love the element of curiosity and openness that you bring to it. So keep doing that. Thanks again for letting me on here. I really appreciate you. And for anybody that's listening, listen, just check out that website, download the report. If it seems like maybe I could help you, or you just like some information, reach out. I'm very happy to be in touch with you.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much. Let's obviously keep the conversation going, the flow going. My resources.
I'm sure we will.
Amen. And love to you and the fam. And thank you that you're now here in Florida. So we should really just get together and break bread instead of
absolutely. Let's
do it virtually.
All right, Doug.
Awesome, brother. Love you for who you are and who you aren't. Peace.
Talk to you soon, my friend. Bye-bye.